They say the house always wins. It's the first rule you learn when you put on the vest, adjust your bow tie, and stand behind a green felt table for 8 hours straight. The house always wins because the math is relentless, because the green zero on the roulette wheel is the devil's tax, and because players, sooner or later, lose their discipline. But I discovered an exception to that universal rule. The house doesn't win if the person dealing the cards, the person spinning the ball, the person controlling the flow of chips decides it's time to redistribute the wealth. My name is Arthur, although in the casino I was known as employee number 412. For 12 years I was a model dealer, one of those who is never late, never complains, has a shuffling technique so clean it looks like a magic trick, and a smile so rehearsed nobody notices it's fake. During the first 7 years I was honest. I saw people lose their houses, their marriages, and their dignity in front of my table, and I was just a mute spectator, just another tool of the casino, like the rake or the card shoe. But everything changed the day my sister, Elena, received her diagnosis. It wasn't just the disease that terrified us, it was the bill. In this country, getting sick is a luxury the poor cannot afford. The treatment cost more than I would earn in 10 lifetimes dealing cards. The casino, my employer, a corporation that cleared $3 million profit every weekend, denied me an emergency loan. They told me it was company policy. In that moment, loyalty was broken. And when loyalty breaks in the mind of a man who handles millions with his own hands, what follows is inevitable. I decided they would pay for the treatment. And not just that, they would pay for every hour I stood enduring the smoke and insults of rich drunks. I was going to rob them. But I wasn't going to do it like an idiot with a gun or an action movie plan. I was going to do it right under their noses, under the 400 security cameras, surrounded by guards and floor managers. I was going to gift my family $5 million, chip by chip, and it would take them years to realize it. The plan wasn't born overnight. I spent 6 months just observing, studying the cracks in the system. Casino security is based on distrust toward the player, but it has a giant blind spot, arrogant confidence in their internal procedures. They believe that if you follow protocol, it is impossible to cheat. My brother-in-law, Julian, would be the executor. Julian was a gray guy, the kind you forget 3 seconds after seeing him. He had no record, no visible gambling debts, and most importantly, nerves of steel. The technique I developed was a variation of what in the jargon we call a false payout, but with an illusionist twist I had perfected by practicing with coins in front of a mirror until my fingers bled. Most casino thieves are greedy. They want to win $1 million in one night. That is what triggers the alarms. The eye in the sky, the surveillance department, looks for statistical spikes. If a table loses too much money in an hour, they review the tapes. My strategy was erosion. We would steal little by little, drop by drop, but constantly. The first night was a Tuesday. Tuesdays are slow nights. The floor managers, the pit bosses, are bored and less alert. Julian sat at my American roulette table. He bought chips worth $200, nothing flashy. He played for an hour, winning a little, losing a little, keeping a low profile. Then the moment arrived. Julian bet on a series of orphan numbers and on black. The ball landed on black 17. He won. Here's where the magic happened. The procedure dictates that first I must clear the layout of losing chips and then pay the winners. While I collected the losing chips with my right hand, my left hand, the one that had to prepare the payout, made the move. I had a stack of value chips ready. Julian had won, let's say, $300, but my fingers, with an agility that defied the eye, slid 2 extra $100 chips into the base of the stack I handed him. It's called splashing the pot in poker, but in roulette, it's a stack push. When handing him the tower of chips, the higher value ones were hidden or sandwiched between the lower ones, or I simply added more chips than owed. But I did it with such naturalness and speed that to the camera overhead, it just looked like a standard payout. Julian didn't count the chips on the table. That's for rookies. He simply dragged them toward him, played a couple more hands, losing a bit to cover his tracks, and went to the cashier to cash out. That night, we won $1,000 extra, $1,000 that didn't exist in the records, $1,000 the casino wouldn't miss because it fell within the daily margin of error. When Julian called me from a burner phone to tell me he had the cash, I vomited in the employee bathroom. It was pure terror. But the next day, nobody called me to the office. Nobody looked at me strangely. The system had failed in my favor. During the first year, we operated like this twice a week. Never the same day, never the same time. Julian sometimes came subtly disguised. Glasses, a cap, sometimes clean-shaven, sometimes with a 3-day beard. We changed tables. If I was on blackjack, we used a different technique. In blackjack, when you pay a blackjack 3-2, there's a moment when the dealer places the chips next to the players. My technique consisted of palming a $500 chip. I had it hidden in the curvature of my hand. When extending the legitimate payout, I dropped the $500 chip onto Julian's original bet just before paying him. Then I paid him based on that inflated bet. It was risky, much more so than roulette, because the camera has a better angle on the cards. But we only did it when the pit boss had his back turned or was attending to a dispute at another table. Elena's illness stabilized thanks to the best private doctors in the city. We paid everything in cash, small amounts so as not to raise suspicions with the IRS. But here is where human psychology comes in. Greed is a drug more potent than heroin. Seeing that it worked, that it was easy, we started increasing the stakes. We were no longer satisfied with $1,000 a night. We wanted $5,000, $10,000. We brought in a third member, a childhood friend of Julian's, Marcos. Now I had 2 players at the table. This allowed us to create a distraction. Marcos would cause a small scene, knock over a drink, or argue about a misplaced bet, forcing the pit boss to look at him. In that second of controlled chaos, I overpaid Julian at the other end of the table. It was like a synchronized ballet. I was the conductor, and they were my musicians. We reached the 3rd year and had already taken out nearly $2 million. I continued living in my modest apartment, driving my old Toyota. That was my armor. Many thieves fall because they show up with a Rolex the next day. Not me. I kept eating the stale turkey sandwich in the employee cafeteria. But inside, I felt like a god. I walked through the casino looking at the bosses, at the managers in their expensive suits, thinking, I am smarter than you. I am bleeding you dry and you're thanking me. That arrogance was the beginning of the end, although it would take time to arrive. The casino started to notice something. They didn't know what, but the statistics of my tables in the long run were slightly below the theoretical hold average. The hold is the percentage of money the casino keeps from everything wagered. In American roulette, it should be 5.26%. At my tables, it sometimes dropped to 3% or 2%. It wasn't enough to prove theft. It could simply be the house's bad luck, a streak of lucky players. But in the gambling world, bad luck doesn't exist if it lasts 3 years. They put me under intensive surveillance. I knew because they started rotating me from tables more often. Normally, a dealer stays at their post for 40 minutes and rests for 20. They started moving me every 20 minutes. They wanted to break my rhythm, see if the pattern of losses followed me. We had to cool the operation. For 3 months, we didn't steal a single dollar. I was the perfect employee. The stats at my tables returned to normal. Security got bored. False alarm, they must have thought. Arthur is legit. He just had a bad run. When they lowered their guard, we came back harder. This time, we went for the purple chips, the $5,000 ones. The plan for the $5,000 chips was a feat of social engineering. We needed a very busy night, New Year's Eve. The casino was a zoo, people screaming, loud music, alcohol flowing like water. The pit bosses were overwhelmed. Julian sat at my craps table. Craps is the most chaotic game in the casino. There are chips flying, people shouting bets, the stick man moving the dice. It is the perfect place for a white glove pickpocket. Julian bet heavy on the pass line. I was in charge of paying the bets on the right side. During a winning streak where everyone was high-fiving and celebrating, I slid a $5,000 chip under a stack of green $25 chips. It was a suicidal move. If the supervisor looked at that instant, I was dead. But he didn't look. He was flirting with a waitress. Julian grabbed the stack, put it in his pocket, and left. $5,000 in a second. We did it 10 times that night. $50,000 in a single session. It was intoxicating. We felt untouchable. My family had a new house, put under the name of a shell company. My nephews went to private schools, and I was still there, with my vest and bow tie, being the boring uncle who works nights. But the casino has a secret weapon that isn't cameras nor guards. It is algorithms. They hired an external security audit firm. These guys don't watch videos, they watch pure data. They cross-referenced my shift schedules with table losses, and most importantly, they started tracking the regular players who won when I was there. Julian had been careful, but after 4 years, his face appeared too many times in the moments the house lost. They didn't have proof of physical theft because my technique was too good, but they had the mathematical correlation. And for a casino, that's enough to start a hunt.
The fatal error wasn't mine, nor Julian's. It was my sister's. Elena, who was now recovered, made the mistake of posting a photo on social media. A photo on a yacht. We didn't own a yacht. We didn't have friends with a yacht. The casino's security department has investigators who track employees' social media looking for signs of unexplained wealth. They saw the photo. They investigated Elena. They saw that her husband, Julian, didn't have a known job that justified that standard of living. They cross-referenced Julian's photo with the casino's facial recognition database. Bingo! The player who always wanted my tables was married to my sister. The connection was made. But they didn't arrest me immediately. They wanted to catch us red-handed. They wanted to see the trick. For 2 weeks, I felt the walls closing in. I noticed glances. The pit boss stood too close to me. One night, I saw a man in a gray suit standing behind the gaming area, staring at me. He wasn't looking at the table. He was looking at my hands. My instinct screamed, "Abort!" I gave an imperceptible signal to Julian, a slight tap on the ear, which meant, "Leave now." Julian got up and left, but it was too late to stop the machinery. They knew who we were. They just needed the evidence for trial. I decided it was time to retire. We had $5 million. It was enough. I told Julian we wouldn't do it again, that I would resign in a month and we would move to another state. But fate has a macabre sense of humor. My last night, the night I was going to submit my resignation letter, Julian showed up. He wasn't supposed to be there. I told him not to come. But Julian had contracted something I didn't see coming. Addiction to theft. He liked the adrenaline more than the money. He sat at my blackjack table. He looked at me with defiant eyes. He bet the maximum. I was paralyzed. If I didn't play along, he could cause a scene. If I played along, we would get caught. The pit boss, Mr. Henderson, approached. "Everything good, Arthur?" he asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything good, sir," I replied. I dealt the cards. Julian had a 12. I had a visible 10. Julian hit. He got a 9. 21. He won. I paid. I did it clean. No tricks. Julian looked at me confused. He expected the extra payout. He played another hand. Won. I paid clean again. Julian started sweating. He was losing patience. On the third hand, he made a huge bet and lost. I collected his chips. He looked at me with fury. And then he did the unthinkable. "Hey, you paid me wrong on the last one," he shouted. He was trying to force a review to confuse me so I'd give him extra chips to shut him up. It was a desperate and stupid move. Mr. Henderson approached immediately. "Gentlemen, is there a problem?" Julian insisted. "This useless guy can't count." Henderson smiled, a shark smile. "Don't worry, sir. We're going to review the tape right now. Please, come with me." Julian went pale. Reviewing the tape wouldn't just show that hand, it would show all the previous ones with forensic scrutiny. In that moment, I knew it was over. They didn't take me to a police interrogation room. They took me to the Fishbowl, an office in the sub-basement. The head of security and the casino director were there. On the table, there were photos. Photos of me, of Julian, of my sister, of the yacht, of the new house, and spreadsheets, hundreds of them. "It took us years, Arthur," the director said, almost with admiration.
Your sleight of hand is the best I've seen in 30 years. If you'd use that talent to be a magician, you'd be famous. Instead, you're a thief." They showed me a super slow-motion video, magnified 400 times. There it was, the exact moment my pinky finger pushed $2,000 chips under Julian's stack. It was imperceptible at normal speed, but at that speed, it was an irrefutable conviction. They gave me a choice. They could call the FBI. I would go to federal prison for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. My sister would go down too. My nephews would go to social services. Or I could sign a confession, return all the assets we had bought, the house, the cars, the bank accounts, and walk out the door with the clothes on my back, never to set foot in a casino in my life. And of course, I'd be on the global blacklist. No casino in the world would hire me or let me in. They chose to recover their money rather than justice. For them, $5 million was more important than seeing me behind bars. I signed. We returned everything. We went back to square one. My sister had to sell her jewelry. We moved back to the small apartment. Julian fell into a deep depression. I got a job in a warehouse, moving boxes. My hands, which once handled fortunes with the delicacy of a pianist, are now full of calluses and cardboard cuts. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the sound of the ivory ball hitting the diamonds of the roulette wheel. Clack, clack, clack. It's the sound of what could have been and wasn't. What I learned is that the perfect crime exists, but the perfect criminal doesn't. The human factor, greed, ego, misunderstood love, always ends up ruining the mathematical equation. I managed to fool the most sophisticated system in the world for years. I gifted millions to my family. I was a modern Robin Hood of green felt. But in the end, the house always wins. Or almost always. Because even though they took the money, they couldn't take away the knowledge that for 4 years, I was the master of the game. I decided who won. And that feeling is worth more than any $5,000 chip. But my story is just a drop in the ocean. Casino employees see things that would make the average citizen tremble. If you think my scam was elaborate, you can't imagine what the cleaning staff or the waitresses who serve you free drinks do. They have access to places where cameras don't reach and see the darkest secrets of millionaires. There is one story in particular, that of a waitress who didn't need sleight of hand, just an opportunity and a cold mind to take much more than I did. You have to know the story of the waitress who stole $26 million from the casino where she worked. Here's how. It is insane how she mocked security in a totally different way than mine. Click here to watch that video now, because I assure you that after seeing it, you will never look at a waitress the same way again.